Chapter 503 to 504. Looking at the leaving figure of Shizune and Yui, especially Shizune's, Tsunade's heart was full of self-blame. Although Shizune has been her disciple for over a decade now, for most of that period Tsunade was either playing around from one place to another or she was indulged in gambling and drinking, so she had no intention of training Shizune, just wanted Shizune to be by her side because Shizune was her lover Kato Dan's niece. Tsunade's selfishness and carelessness are clearly reflected today because even though Shizune has been by her side for over a decade, Shizune's growth in strength and skills has not been very good as Shizune barely even reaches the level of a low-class jonin. Sigh, it's all my fault instead of wallowing in grief. If I had focused on training Shizune then maybe, sighed Tsunade in a guilty tone. Compared to Shizune, Hyuga Yui's strength is already quite high because of receiving systematic training under the guidance of the deceased wife of the patriarch of the Hyuga clan. While Tsunade was guilty, Fujin flew back into the air and looked around. It stands to reason that since Satori has been solved, the Akatsuki organization should also start their follow-up offensive by now. However, when Fujin looked around, he found no trace of any member of the Akatsuki organization anywhere near the village, and this has made him a little confused. At the same time, he also realized that the village's response was very strange previously. Satori has destroyed a large section of the village, but the village only sent 2 powerful people including Tsunade and Jiraiya. As for Sandaime Hokage, Elder Koharu, and Elder Mitokado, as well as the patriarchs of all the shinobi clans and the other elites of the village, did not show up. Are they still so calm? Muttered Fujin and started to analyze the possible cause. And it didn't take him too long to realize something. Before he had been focused on dealing with Satori and didn't have any extra energy to analyze the situation, but now that he is free, Fujin realized that the reason why both Akatsuki organization and the village are so silent is probably because of his intervention. Thinking so, Fujin was a little dumbfounded. Huh? Does Sandaime Sama, Abito, and Nagato think that the entire Amatsukami is also standing behind this one, so they have to stop their previous actions and reformulate their strategies accordingly? This thought is quite reasonable, but only Fujin knows that the current him has no support because, except for him, Shursui, and Itachi, there are no official members in Amatsukami. And since Fujin has lost contact with both Shursui and Itachi, so currently, he is the only one present here who can deal with the Akatsuki organization. Of course, there is also Sandaime Kazekage, but his body has not been cultivated completely, so his combat effectiveness is not high enough to fight against the likes of Hiriko, Abito, and Nagato. As for the other members, nobody else is active because his soul is currently present inside the Fujin clone. Of course, Fujin can change his body and reappear on the battlefield with a different identity, such as Uchiha Tsukihai or Suijin or Yama, but it's all him essentially, so it is highly unlikely that more than a single member of Amatsukami will appear at the current battlefield in order to resist the Akatsuki organization. While Fujin was analyzing the situation, the wailing and crying of Satora stopped, and the fire covering his body was gradually extinguished at the same time its figure shrank and changed back to the appearance of a 9 or 10 years old boy. Muku, said Mui with a joyous expression and hurried forward. The boy lying in the pit slowly opened his eyes and weakly murmured, "Oda-san." Mui cried in joy and hugged his son. "It was all my fault. Please forgive me, Muku." But Muku did not share the same joy as Mui. He pushed away Mui and staggered to his own feet. Mui pleaded, "Muku, please don't get controlled by the box of ultimate bliss anymore. Look at me. This time, no matter where you go, I will accompany you." Muku flashed a mocking grin and said, "It's useless and it's too late. I can't get rid of its control anymore, so just live alone." As he finished speaking, Muku forcibly molded chakra and deliberately inspired the Great Celestial Fire Prison, cursed seal that imprisoned him. People who are imprisoned in Great Celestial Fire Prison. Cursed seal must not mold chakra, because if they do so, it will trigger the Great Celestial Fire Prison. Cursed seal, and the person will be swallowed by flames. Therefore, Muku's whole body was instantly covered in fire.
No.
Muku, please don't. Mui exclaimed and rushed towards Muku in order to stop him. However, Mui was too late as Muku, whose entire body had been swallowed by the flames, spun around a little and quickly rushed into the box of ultimate bliss. As Muku said earlier, people who fall into the clutches of the box of ultimate bliss cannot get rid of its control. Even if the entire physical body is burned or destroyed by some means, the spiritual body will still return back to the box of ultimate bliss and will further be used to corrupt the other individuals who enter inside it. Therefore, saving Muku was impossible from the beginning, and Fujin wasn't surprised by this turn of events. The moment Muku entered the box of ultimate bliss, the entrance of the box also gradually closed, and all the crying and wailing stopped. At the same time, the substantial evil chakra that was being released from the box of ultimate bliss also disappeared abruptly.
Swish.
The cold night breeze blew, and a momentary peace was restored all around. And Mui, who was chasing after his son, collapsed in front of the box as its entrance was closed. His current expression was a dazed one. His eyes were hollow, as if his soul had also left with Muku. While everyone around looked at Mui with either pity or a complicated gaze, an incredibly fast figure suddenly flashed in front of him, and before anyone could react to his sudden appearance, the figure directly pierced his hand through Mui's heart, as a result, killing Mui in a single blow. Fujin, who was floating in midair, suddenly muttered, finally appeared. Tsunade and Jiraiya on the ground were taken aback by the sudden appearance of this new party, because the speed of the other party was too fast, completely exceeding their reaction speed. Vigilant, Jiraiya and Tsunade looked at the appearance of this figure, as if wanting to figure out who exactly is he. At this time, the figure that had suddenly appeared tossed aside Mui's dead body and muttered in disdain, Kusagakure's waste. Couldn't even complete the one task he was given. As he tossed aside Mui's dead body, his appearance was also revealed, and it turned out that he is not just anyone, but a contemporary of Tsunade and Jiraiya's generation. Hirako. Tsunade's face sank and she shouted at him, Why? Why did you join the likes of Akatsuki? Have you forgotten that you were a Konoha shinobi? Jiraiya also echoed from the side, It's still not too late to stop. We will help you intercede with Sensei, don't make mistakes again and again. I don't have any nostalgia for this village that didn't even bother to take me seriously, said Hirako indifferently, then turned his head and looked at the box of ultimate bliss. Noting the iron sand nailing the box to the ground, Hirako pressed his hands on it, and as soon as he did so, the iron sand lost the chakra support and scattered on the ground. With that done, Hirako lifted the box of ultimate bliss and threw it into the air abruptly. Immediately afterward, he too jumped into the air along with the box of ultimate bliss. Whoosh whoosh. Accompanied by the sound of breaking wind, the chimera bird glided across the air and caught the box as well as Hirako on its back. Do you think it would this easy? Muttered Fujin as he clapped his hands together. Naturally, Fujin wouldn't allow Hirako to take away the box of ultimate bliss. And as soon as he clapped his hands together, countless iron sand particles rushed towards the chimera bird from all directions as it took the form of a giant tornado at the center of which was Hirako and his chimera bird. Whyish. Instantly, the air around Hirako's plan looked like two small twisters as it continuously absorbed the chakra controlling the iron sand. And with the loss of chakra support, the iron sand also scattered around immediately. After resolving the iron sand tornado, Hirako chuckled and said in a mocking tone, Do you think that the likes of you, who merely rely on magnet release, can come close enough to stopping me? Just wait for a little while. After I deal with this thing, next I will be coming for you. Fujin's face sank. The restraint of dark release on ninjutsu is too remarkable, and unless it is a highly advanced ninjutsu like that of Uzumaki Naruto's futon, Raisin Shuriken, which is the epitome of shape and nature transformation, otherwise, ordinary ninjutsu simply doesn't work on him. Not to mention, Fujin isn't even sure whether futon, Raisin Shuriken, would work on the current Hirako. After all, the current Hirako is completely different from what he was in the canon. While Fujin was pondering over whether to use Shikatsu Miyaku against Hirako or not, Hirako stretched out his arm and released the absorbed magnet release chakra. Then, while controlling the scattered iron sand to attack Fujin, he said with a chiseled grin, Why don't you have a taste of your own magnet release? Jiraiya and Tsunade on the ground glanced at each other and decided to join the battle in order to prevent Hirako from taking away the box of ultimate bliss. This time, the member of Amatsukami found someone who can restrain Satora does not mean that they will be so lucky next time. Therefore, Jiraiya and Tsunade would never allow the box of ultimate bliss to fall into the hands of Akatsuki. Boom, 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 boom. Explosion! But before Jiraiya or Tsunade could make their move, suddenly there were bursts of explosions that came from all over the village. Obviously, it wasn't just Hirako who entered the village. The other members of Akatsuki have also launched a full-scale attack. Looking at Konoha that has again fallen into a chaotic state, Zetsu muttered, And now, it begins. The deafening explosion sounded from almost all directions of the village at the same time. The village, which had just returned to tranquility a few moments ago after the box of ultimate bliss was closed again, fell into chaos, clamor, and roars. While hovering in midair, Fujin looked at the current situation of the village with a solemn expression. In his Byakugan vision, he could see that the eastern part of the village had already fallen into a chaotic state. Within a small area of a few blocks, hundreds of new chakra signatures appeared instantly, and all these chakra signatures were connected to a single point via chakra threads. Fujin didn't need to guess too deeply to realize that the person there must be Sasori of the Red Sand, who has already started his Red Secret technique, performance of 100 puppets. But these 100 puppets weren't the end. There was also the presence of Raza's Gold Sand, Yuki Clan's Ice, and Kagaya Clan's White Bones, among many other types of ninjutsu being used there from time to time. Compared with the chaotic and noisy eastern section, the western section is extremely quiet. But nobody who saw the western section from up in the air would assume that the situation there is normal because it is completely abnormal. Fujin could see thick mist appearing in the western section, and this thick mist was slowly and steadily engulfing the entire western section, and there were vague sounds of fighting coming from the mist. Then there is Uchiha clan district where fire and lightning are constantly rising into the sky. Sometimes ice and fire would collide, and sometimes fire and fire would collide. As a result, thick thunder clouds have gathered in the sky above the Uchiha clan district. The Inuzuka clan is swarming with all kinds of birds and beasts along with the constant sound of tornado twisters. The district of the Aburame clan is swarming with countless papers carrying out endless explosions. The district of the Sarutobi clan is filled with all kinds of ninjutsu colliding with each other. Overall, it seems to be a doomsday scene, and looking at such a scene, Fujin can't help but mutter. Did Akatsuki organization just launch a full-scale attack on Konoha? But Fujin was still a bit confused. But if that's the case, then where are Obito and Nagato? Also, the Konin attacking the Aburame clan, is she the real one? Or just a paper clone? Although Fujin can see that Akatsuki organization has launched a full-scale attack on Konoha, he still has to be extremely vigilant against the sneak attacks. After all, there are still a lot of players who haven't yet made their appearance, like Nagato, Pain Rakuto, Obito, Kakuzu, and Haiden. Amongst all of these, Fujin is more vigilant against the sudden appearance of Nagato and Obito, especially Obito. Because Obito is now DMS Obito, he has access to both long-distance Kamui and short-distance Kamui, so he is much more dangerous compared to others. With his long-distance Kamui, Obito can kill anyone in the blink of an eye without even a need to show himself. The tearing of Kamui is something that even truth-seeking orbs cannot resist, let alone him who uses Shikatsu Miyako for defense, so if once conspired by Obito, only death would await Fujin. Jiraiya and Tsunade on the battlefield naturally heard the movements all over the village. Looking in the direction of the Hokage building, Jiraiya muttered with a solemn expression. They launched a full-scale attack. Tsunade did not turn her gaze from the direction of Hirako standing on top of his chimera bird and said in a deep tone, "Don't worry about the other things. Sensei has been prepared for this situation and would respond accordingly. For now, we have to get that box of bliss from Hirako's hands. Can't let such a dangerous thing fall into Akatsuki's hands again." After speaking so, Tsunade jumped on top of a broken wall, facing the surviving Konoha shinobi who were still present here, and shouted, "Don't let the Akatsuki organization take away the box of ultimate bliss." Yes, Tsunade-sama, all the ninjas nodded solemnly, and were ready to give their all, even their lives to make sure that the box of bliss does not fall into Akatsuki organization's hands. Having experienced the nightmare-like hard fight not long ago, all the surviving ninjas understood the horror of Satori and the box of ultimate bliss. At the same time, they are also well aware of the consequences should the box of ultimate bliss fall into Akatsuki organization's hands. Therefore, they would rather die than let such dangerous things be taken away by the Akatsuki. Hirako, standing on the back of his chimera bird, sneered, "You would all rather die. Huh? Whoosh. Then I shall fulfill this wish of yours." Even before his words were finished, Hirako's figure disappeared. Immediately afterward, he suddenly appeared on the ground and directly pierced the heart of Konoha shinobi with his arm that was hardened with steel release. The process was faster than the time he killed Mui. What? So fast? The Konoha shinobis around were taken aback and only managed to react when Hirako pulled out his bloody arm from the chest of the dead Konoha shinobi. This time, however, the 5 shinobi were ready and defended Hirako's attacks with their individual methods, but the result was still the same. All 5 of them died at the same time as their hearts were pierced by Hirako. After killing the 5 Konoha shinobi, all 5 figures disappeared, as if they were never even present there in the first place. Jiraiya was shocked. There was no white smoke nor any other element. This shows that they were not any kind of clones, but after images, his speed has already reached such a degree? Toad Fukasaku on Jiraiya's shoulder was also shocked. Such inhuman speed. Is this really swift release Kekkei Genkai? Even if all the Konoha ninjas on the battlefield were somewhat tired or wounded, but they were all experienced shinobi, not free melons that can be chopped so easily. Damn it! Tsunade was furious as she saw Hirako slaughtering fellow Konoha shinobi one after another, and without wasting any more breath on trying to convince him with words alone, she pounced on him with her fastest speed to land her explosive punch on her and kill him in one shot. Boom. But the moment her fist touched Hirako, it completely phased through him. Tsunade instantly realized that this is only an afterimage left by Hirako, and her fist after passing through the afterimage hit the ground, producing an explosive noise as well as smashing a deep pit that sunk several meters into the ground. Although her attack failed, Tsunade was far from giving up and instantly turned around to find Hirako's figure. Whoosh. But before she could get up, Hirako suddenly flashed behind her and pierced his through Tsunade's back. Feeling the sudden wind behind her, Tsunade wanted to turn around or flash away. But Hiruko's speed was too fast, and she could barely tilt her body a few centimeters when Hiruko's hand pierced through her back and appeared out of her chest. Puff! Tsunade spat out a mouthful of blood, and her clothes were wet. But thankfully, Hiruko's arm did not puncture her heart because she managed to tilt her body a few centimeters. Therefore, she would still live. Hiruko obviously noticed this, but he didn't mind. Even if she managed to save her heart from being punctured, it would mean nothing as she would die very soon. Therefore, he decided to play with her a little bit and said with an amused tone, "Tsunade, do you see it now? Do you realize it now? This is the gap between us." Cough cough. Tsunade was unable to answer as blood was accumulating in her throat. "Tsunade!" Jiraiya in the distance exclaimed and rushed over. Hiruko's smirk widened as he glanced at Jiraiya. "Are you in such a hurry to die as well?" and decided to toy with Jiraiya for a little while until Sandaime Hokage himself shows up. But just as Hiruko wanted to withdraw his arm that was piercing through Tsunade, his brows frowned because he found that his arm couldn't be pulled out. Although Tsunade was coughing up blood, she was also tightly holding Hiruko's hand that pierced through her chest. Then, immediately, she waved her elbow behind in order to smash Hiruko's head. Smash! Contrary to what Tsunade expected, there was no sound of bones breaking, nor was there any sound of muscles tearing, which made her frown. Tsunade turned her head to notice that her elbow was blocked by Hiruko's other arm was hardened by steel release, and 3 black Tomo were already spinning in Hiruko's Sharingan. Seeing the Sharingan, the surprise on Tsunade's face was clearly apparent, and noting her surprise, Hiruko said, "The contraction of muscles in your shoulder blades has already exposed your intention. Tsunade, anything you do would have no effect in front of these eyes." Immediately afterward, lightning appeared on Hiruko's arm that was piercing through Tsunade's chest. The use of lightning caused a paralyzing sensation on Tsunade's body and loosened her grip on Hiruko's hand. Using this opportunity, Hiruko instantly pulled back his hand at the same time, lifted his leg hardened with steel release, and heavily kicked Tsunade's back, which broke several bones in her body. At this time, Jiraiya also rushed over and started fighting with Hiruko. While Jiraiya is in Sennin mode, all of his physical stats including action speed, reaction speed, striking strength, perception, ninjutsu, etc. are boosted to the limit. And with the cooperation of the 2 great sage toads that can assist Jiraiya in the honored Sennin mode, it is not an exaggeration to say that his fighting power doubles. However, Hiruko is also one of the strongest existences in the current shinobi world, with a combination of 5 Kekkai Genkai including Swift Release, Steel Release, Dark Release, Storm Release, and Sharingan, coupled with the Chimera Buds in his body and the dark medical ninjutsu that he has mastered. Hiruko is not only not afraid of the Jiraiya in the Sennin mode, but is more than confident enough in fully thrashing Jiraiya. Boom 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 boom. The 2 of them are like monsters, constantly fighting on the ground, dragging out countless afterimages across the battlefield. Each and every move would produce shocking airwaves and ear-piercing loud noise. When Jiraiya fought with Hiruko, the Konoha shinobis were a little relieved and hoped that Jiraiya-sama can defeat this monster, but it's a pity that they hoped too much of him, as after just a few exchanges, Jiraiya was ruthlessly kicked out by Hiruko. Boom. Jiraiya, who was kicked out by Hiruko, knocked out several buildings in a row and barely managed to stop the momentum of his body as the smoke and dust covered the sky. Hiruko twisted his neck and said in a disappointing tone, "Is Sennin mode only at this levels?" Initially, Hiruko had high hopes from Jiraiya, who can use the Sennin mode. After all, the power of Senja Hashirama in the Sennin mode was simply mind-boggling. But after personally experiencing the power of Jiraiya in the Sennin mode, Hiruko was seriously disappointed. While Hiruko looked at Jiraiya with a disappointed gaze, Jiraiya, who crawled out of the rubble, coughed out blood, and his heart was stormy as he looked at Hiruko with an incredulous expression. If he was in his best state, then there is no way he would be defeated so quickly at the hands of Hiruko, but not long. He fought against Satora that not only resulted in heavy chakra consumption but also inflicted some injuries, so the state of Jiraiya, when he fought against Hiruko, Jiraiya was already a bit tired. Not to mention, he can't use Senjutsu Chakra Enhanced Ninjutsu against Hiruko as they will be easily absorbed by Hiruko. Therefore, Jiraiya's combat effectiveness is greatly limited against Hiruko, who can cope up with all forms of combat thanks to his 5 Kekkai Genkai. But even with all that, Jiraiya had to admit that he is no longer Hiruko's opponent. The difference in raw power is simply too much. Jiraiya has a feeling that even if the current him, Tsunade, and Orochimaru work together to fight, the result would be no different, and they would still be defeated. Hiruko obviously didn't care about Jiraiya's thoughts, and looking at the 2 of the legendary Sannin lying injured at his feet, Hiruko said with a carefree smile, "It's a pity that Orochimaru has already defected, because if not, then I would have easily thrashed the legendary Sannin here, and I wonder, what is Sandaime Hokage thinking upon looking at the scene here? I really want to see his current expression." Boom. While Hirako was distracted in mocking Jiraiya, Tsunade and Sandaime Hokage, a loud explosive sound resounded, and the entire battlefield shook. Everyone turned to look at the cause and noticed that the box of ultimate bliss that was supposed to be present on the back of Hirako's chimera bird has fallen from the sky. Immediately afterward, Fujin's figure also slowly floated down and gracefully landed on top of the box of ultimate bliss.